Welcome back to Truth to Tell. I'm Andy Driscoll.
And I'm Michelle Alimoradi. Andy asked me a few months ago to put together a show while he was on vacation, and I immediately knew that I wanted to talk about theater. Unfortunately, at that time, I wasn't able to get the folks that I wanted together in time because it was kind of short notice, but we decided to go ahead and postpone the idea so that we could talk about it in depth and make sure that we had a great group of people in the room to have the discussion with. So we are bringing that topic to you today. And I must admit my own biases for choosing this. I originally came to Minneapolis in 2006 to finish my degree in music theater performance, and I originally grew up in Oklahoma City, where in my experience folks seem to have an entirely different relationship with theater than they do in the Twin Cities. It wasn't something for everyone. It was something that certain people could afford to partake in on a regular basis. And I was lucky that my mother would splurge every now and then and take me along with her. But most people were exposed to theater through the occasional high school or church production, a lot of which I was probably featured in the community. And most of it was safe. It was traditional. It was in the sense of the 1950s golden age of musicals sense of the term, which is great. But, you know, we're not in the 1950s anymore. And for the most part, it stuck to a pretty tight list of repertory shows. So when I moved to the Twin Cities, I was totally taken aback by the particular brand of theater that was being produced here. The theater that I saw was new, it was fearless, it was gritty, and more importantly, it was cheap or free and plentiful. And the Twin Cities is second only to New York City in per capita theater attendance. In a recent poll, 92% of Minnesotans believe that the arts are crucial to quality of life here. And the Twin Cities residents also have a reputation for the pursuit of social equity and common understanding. So it makes perfect sense that theater and social justice should be intertwined here, does it not? Our guests today are all committed to presenting their theater as accessible, educational, edgy, and relatable to diverse audiences. So we'll hear about their respective projects today and talk about how theater has served as a tool for activism for them.
First, we have Esther O'Ray. Esther is an independent teaching and performing artist in the Twin Cities and works as an associate artist with the In the Heart of the Beast Puppet and Mask Theater. Oh, God, what a great group. Famous for their annual May Day parade, of course, in the Powder-Horn neighborhood. Esther, but you should see them on stage with things like Hansel and Gretel at the Minnesota Orchestra and all those wonderful puppets, giant puppets out on stage with the orchestra. It's just great. Esther also performs in a show called The Hebrew Lesson about the conflict between Israel and Palestine. Esther, welcome to TTT.
Thank you and good morning.
And we also have with us in the studio today Patrick Scully. Patrick is an openly gay, HIV-positive performing artist and founder of Patrick's Cabaret. It's a flex performance space now located near Lake Street and Minnehaha in Minneapolis, though it's had at least one other location, if not two, right?
Two
other locations.
Sort of permanent homes, and then there was a short period of time where we were nomadic and forced into exile by the city fathers and mothers.
But now you have a beautiful firehouse space on the corner of Lake and Minnehaha, and it's a very celebrated institution of Minneapolis.
Yeah, it's great.
You've actually been there for a while now, right?
Since 1999, we've been in the firehouse.
Yeah, it's a good spot. Good space.
Yeah, and it's almost 3 decades now that the Cabaret has been around. It's famous for open call cabarets for Twin Cities professional and novice performers alike to show off their work to the community. Patrick, glad to have you today.
Nice to be here.
Nice
Thanks.
to have you. We're also delighted to have Karen Wiese-Thompson. Karen has worked as an actress in and around the Twin Cities for almost 30 years. And, geez, why haven't we bumped into each other before this?
Because when I'm not on stage, I hide.
Well, I don't do that. Well, she's currently appearing as Puck in A Midsummer Night's Dream with the company 10,000 Things, her 7th show with that company. and 10,000 Things performs for audiences that typically have little access to theater, such as prison inmates and women in shelters. What a wonderful mission. Karen, welcome to you.
Thank you very much.
You must be having fun with Puck.
I am having a ball. It's one of those roles I never thought I'd play, and
Unless you
Here you are.
put your hair in blue now.
yeah, I did.
Okay.
Yeah. And speaking of which, I think we say this a little later on, but I'll let you know you can see Karen's blue hair if you watch us live streaming online at www.livestream.com/truth-to-tell-mn. If you want to see Karen's cool new hairstyle. We'll announce that again later on. We also have with us Jack Ruler. He's the artistic director and founder of Mixed Blood Theater. Mixed Blood is a multiracial company that promotes cultural pluralism and individual equality or equity.
Equality is right.
Equality is how you do it.
Yeah.
All right. Jack and Mixed Blood recently received a lot of press for their Radical Hospitality campaign, which gives free admission to all their shows to those who show up the day of the performance. We'll ask him a little more, a little more detail on that. Welcome to you, Jack.
Thank you for having me.
Glad to have you.
And as always, completing our panel today is you. Yes. Call in with your questions and comments about how we can use performance art to bring about social change by calling us 612-341-0980. 612-341-0980, or you can tweet your questions and comments at TTT Andy Driscoll, or post your comments on our Facebook page, which is, of course, facebook.com/truth-to-tell. You can also tune into our live stream videocast at livestream.com/truth-to-tell-min. Don't forget the min. That's livestream.com, truth-to-tell-min.
All right, so we'll get to our panelists here. Well, I think what we'll do is go around the table and hear a little bit more about all of your projects. But it seems that the common thread to all of the projects that you all are doing is largely access to theater, whether it be access to performing or being able to see productions. And I'd like to talk first to you, Jack. I'd like you to explain how this Radical Hospitality program works, because it's pretty new. I don't think anyone else in the Twin Cities, or I actually haven't heard about it anywhere else in the country, of people being able to do this.
You know, Radical Hospitality was something that this is our third season starting this week.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Anybody can come to any show and see it without charge on a first-come, first-served basis. And it was really, the decision to do it was a reaction. One, just trying to link our own mission and our vision and our core values and our strategic priorities. And our vision's about revolutionizing access. And we really just extrapolated things we were doing in other parts. We had said over time we'd been identifying barriers to people participating in theater and just tried to address those. So we'd gotten funds for a certain group of people that we didn't think were coming in large enough numbers or coming at all to subsidize them coming. And we'd found some money so that other people could come for free. And eventually, after all these different initiatives, we found that we were segregating our own audience, which was antithetical to who we were. So we just said, this is what we're going to do for everybody. And in a time when you can see whatever you want to see, whenever you want to see it for free on your cell phone or tablet or laptop, how did we make a case for traveling through the snow at a particular time and plunking down money? And so the first of the many barriers that we decided, instead of starting with the easy ones and going up to the hard ones, let's just start with the hardest one. And as we talked to people over and over again, the perception of theater as an expensive elitist art form was heard over and over again. We said, okay, let's just start with that. And there was a lot of discussions we had internally about value. If you take away the cost, do you diminish the value? But we really think that that value is on a continuum of cost and quality. So if you keep the quality high, eliminate the cost, you actually optimize the value. And so it's been a remarkable transformation for us as an organization in terms of the number of people coming, in terms of who's coming, in terms of age, in terms of income, in terms of race, in terms of disability. One of my favorite statistics is that 9% of the people coming say they've never been to a live show before.
Really?
Wow.
And so
Great.
that's been great. So
Is this at
ultimately,
every performance? Or do you do just one performance out of each run or something?
No, this is every performance of every show.
Oh,
Yeah,
they can
so-
just show up and
Yeah,
and
anybody
be
can
there?
come. So the lobby opens 2 hours before the show, and you come, and on a first come, first served basis, you can go see the shows. And even more so in this access, that we had realized a while ago that generally our mission about addressing artificial barriers to people succeeding in America had manifested itself in terms of race and culture and language and things like that, and that we'd been remiss in not including disability. So about a dozen years ago, we really sort of tried to dig deeper into doing shows by, about, for, and with people with disabilities. And so part of the access that comes with that is we have a fund, so anybody who self-identifies as having disability can call the box office and get free cab rides to and from the theater that Metro Mobility has a reputation to overcome, and so just cabs. And so it's been great. So not only can you see the show without charge, but you can get a free ride to and from the theater. So
That's excellent. I hadn't heard about that.
access is
aspect
just
of
a
it.
key part of what we're trying to do, and Radical Hospitality is one of those avenues.
And of course, the first question people have is how do you afford to do this?
Yes.
You know, it was interesting that we spent about a year and a half internally, the board, and they were unbelievable in chomping on it, but we really said, what are the ripple effects of doing this, and how do we do it? And then once we decided to do it, then we said, okay, how do we pay for it? And yet everybody's first question is,
How do
what's
you
the
pay for
financial model for it? It was the last thing we asked ourselves. But I mean, it's a third-party payer system. It's not that nobody's providing income for us. It just isn't the person seeing the show.
Well, and I think you said in an article that I read that some people are actually coming and they do have a little bit of money to pay, perhaps not what they would pay with a structured ticket price system, but they would donate money after the fact.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because when we started, it was really important to me to demonetize the theater experience. That the only money that was going to pass hands in the theater was going to be for concessions. And people did. They came and they wanted it. It isn't a pay what you can. There is no pass the hat, but and we do solicit everybody by mail after the fact. So the only transaction for coming is we get your contact information, and then we do say come back, and if you can support it. But in the first year alone, we tripled the number of donations from people seeing our shows
Oh, heavens.
from the year before that.
That's
So,
fantastic. Now, there are going to be people out here who are listening to us today, because we're all a bunch of theater folk around here, how did Mixed Blood get started? Talk a little bit about your origins, will you please, Jack?
well, I was in diapers.
Right.
It started without at Theater in the Round in the mid-'70s. There was a production of The Great White Hope, in which it was a big hit for them, and I had a job at the time at a place called the Center for Community Action while I was going to McAllister, and so while I was in college. And my job was to seek out needs in the community and set up programs to meet those needs. And at Theater in the Round, there was a provoking incident during the Great White Hope that the result of which was that there was a lack of opportunity for the professional theater artists of color in the Twin Cities. And so there was a need in the community. I was supposed to set up programs. My own childhood icon had been Martin Luther King. I was going to go to vet school in the fall. I somehow had...
Vet school?
Somehow I imagined between Memorial Day and Labor Day I could rid America of all its isms through theater. And started Mixed Blood as sort of as a reaction to this Theater in the Round event. It was the bicentennial, so America was looking for ways to portray its ideals in different ways. And so at 22 I applied for this bicentennial grant and worked with the Center for Community Action, and that was that summer, and then I never went to vet school.
That's clear.
I have to say, when I moved here, I think I worked. Well, I was doing an internship with Patrick at the Cabaret for a little while, and so that was, I think, one of the first shows I saw was at the Cabaret. But then I'm pretty sure the next show I saw was at Mixed Blood. Theater Moo was doing a really cool piece about adoption there, which you guys were just talking before the show about another piece.
Sun
that
Lee
was-
Chomet has
yeah.
done a one-woman show on that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you were just flitting between firehouses.
Yeah, well, I went to Augsburg, so it's kind of all in the neighborhood, right? So thank you, Jack. I want to move to Karen Wiese-Thompson and talk a little bit about what you've been doing with 10,000 Things, because it's kind of a sort of similar model in that a lot of the shows that you do are totally free for very specific disenfranchised communities, like folks in prisons, and you do a lot of elementary
Yeah,
schools.
this is fascinating stuff.
They
Yeah.
do low-income housing facilities for the
Okay.
elderly. They do chemical dependency centers. We do Dorothy Day Center down in St. Paul every year. The difference being that we take the show to them.
Yeah.
We just did Ramsey County Women's Prison and Hennepin County Women's, and they're probably our favorite audiences because they're so unbelievably receptive. But there's always something new, sometimes there'll be juvenile detention facilities. There'll be a veterans home. We'll go into a veterans hospital, and sometimes they're really successful, and sometimes they're like, well, that maybe wasn't the best fit. But it's always about bringing the world, because life is just more interesting the more diversity you have in your audience.
Well, and let's talk about the kinds of shows
Yeah, I
that
was
you're
just
bringing,
gonna
because you
say.
do a lot of Shakespeare, Greek tragedy, things like that. But
Well,
then
and-
you're also doing some new shows too.
Well,
right?
Michelle tends to focus on
This is Michelle Hensley.
Michelle Hensley,
Yeah,
right?
their
Who
artistic
started
director, yeah.
the company, and I'm not a part of the picking of the shows, but I always find it very fascinating. She doesn't really pick shows that are about. It's not about a message. She's not trying to put out a message. What she's doing is just trying to share stories that are common to all mankind, regardless of race, gender, religion, age, size. It's just connecting to the world in that we all feel sadness, we all feel happiness, we all feel fear and frustration and anger, and all of those identifying things bring us together as a world community. And
Do you find the audiences are a little surprised at the association that they can give, let's say, with their own lives and, let's say, a Shakespeare comedy like Midsummer Night's Dream or
I think
a tragedy?
sometimes they're taken aback that they identify it with as much as they do.
Are they moved? Can you see them being moved?
Oh, I always go back to when I was doing Waiting for Godot at Patrick's Cabaret.
Yeah.
Actually, but we were doing a Boys Totem Town, which is a juvenile detention facility.
Yes.
And Vladimir has a line at the end of the play where he says, I just wish somebody would see me. And this 15-year-old boy grabbed my hand, and he was weeping, and he said, I see you. And he wouldn't let go of my hand.
Wow.
And that doesn't always happen.
Right in the middle of the
Right
play?
in the middle
You
of the
did it?
show. Right in the middle of the show.
Oh, really?
And there's a freedom that people who don't see a lot of theater have to absolutely respond.
Yes.
Just the other day, we're doing Midsummers, when Lysander thinks he's not in love with Hermia anymore, and he's telling her she's a dwarf and a bead, this woman goes, you can do so much better. Okay, they were going to tell you exactly what they think, and as an actor, you just really feed on that.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
I mean, if you take them in like that, they become part of the performance, actually, and that's really one of the exciting.
Absolutely, and that happens all the time. Doesn't matter if it's Shakespeare, if it's Beckett, they're right there.
And we were talking about kind of the same thing Jack brought up earlier, is that there's kind of this perception by some people who don't go to theater often that it's this highfalutin thing, that's unrelatable for a lot of sectors of the community, of society. And when you bring it to these audiences, to them, and make it just right there in their face, it's amazing what kind of reactions you can elicit.
What other shows are 10,000 Things has a home base somewhere, right?
Well, not like they don't really have like an office or anything
Oh, really?
like that. They do have a resident playwright, Kira Obolinski, who is writing an original show for this season and has written 2 previous original shows, Vasilisa and the jazz musical adaptation of Crime and Punishment, Rascal.
Ooh.
And so Kira does write specifically for 10,000 Things now because she knows the audience and she likes writing to that audience.
And it's always taking it into the venues
Yep.
where these folks normally not accessing a
Right.
theater.
We
would
perform
be.
gyms, kitchens, soup kitchens. Whenever we can put chairs in a square, we can perform.
And Kira has kind of a knack for creating these totally different worlds, right? That are, it's sort of the same experience as if you're going to a Greek tragedy. You know, it's apart from your world, so you can kind of dive in a little and feel somewhat relatable on a deep emotional level. But hers are more like, I'm thinking like a Shrek kind of a world, right, where you're pulling together.
Well, Vasilisa was definitely like that. Dirt Sticks, I don't know anything about at all because I haven't seen any of it. But her Rascal was, you know, she was adopting Dostoevsky.
Yes.
Yet she was able to keep the tenor of his writing, yet find a voice that was relatable to everyone who saw it.
Oh, great.
And she really does that. She has a real heartfelt connection to all of the audiences that we perform for.
We have a caller, actually. Lavette is on the line. Lavette, good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for calling.
I'm so happy you can take my call. I am so excited. When I turned on the radio, I usually listen to KSAI, but I was just so thrilled because I have been wanting to go to theaters. I've been exposed to theater. I grew up in Philadelphia, South Philadelphia, and I had an appreciation for the Playhouse theaters and the orchestra, music appreciation. And now that I'm in this situation, low income and diagnosed with a disability, I've come out of the Salvation Army shelter, and now, thank goodness, I have a shelter, an apartment, but still low income. And I've been wanting, I was saying, Minnesota theater, and I just walked down Hennepin and all. I'm like, I want to go. And this is such a wonderful thing that you're offering, and I just wanted to ask a couple questions.
All right, go ahead. Quickly, please.
Okay, I wanted to know, will this be ongoing for low-income persons, this offer?
Which one, Mixed Blood or 10,000 Things?
I love Mixed Blood because it seems like, I haven't seen it, but it seems like it will be something that will actually be something that could kind of gel everyone.
Okay.
And because some people, I've had good jobs before and I wasn't always in this situation, and some people have this idea, it seems to me, I feel, that they have this idea that because you're homeless or low income, that you're not intelligent, or you still don't have desires or, things that you want to do.
You're right. That is a preconception. Jack Ruler.
Yeah, but I think both 10,000 Things and Mixed Blood, just because we're the ones that have spoken, will be around for a long time, and people, whether they're living in shelters or want to come to see the shows at Mixed Blood, we're able to do that without any charge from now into eternity.
And keep listening, because we'll hear about opportunities from Esther and Patrick as well. So keep listening, and you'll hear about more opportunities coming your way. Okay.
Okay. Thank you for taking my call.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Lavette. With that, we're actually going to take a quick break here. So if you just started listening, we are talking with some movers and shakers in Twin Cities theater community here. We're talking about social justice through theater, and we have Esther O'Ray, independent teaching and performing artist and associate artist within the Heart of the Beast Theater. Patrick Scully, his performing artist and founder of Patrick's Cabaret. Karen Wiese-Thompson is a longtime Twin Cities actress and company member with 10,000 Things. And Jack Ruler is the artistic director and founder of Mixed Blood Theater.
Has theater made an impact on you, on how you view your own community? Well, give us a call with your comments and questions. 612-341-0980, 612-341-0980, or tweet us at TTT Andy Driscoll, or post comments on Truth to Tell's Facebook page, Facebook.com/Truth to Tell. Geez. And of course, we're on livestream.com/Truth to Tell Min. And so you can see this in video as we are speaking, and then that'll be put up later. Anyway, don't go away. We'll be right back.
So now we'll get back to today's conversation. We're talking about social justice theater, theater for social change, social equity, however you want to frame it. What power does theater have as a tool for social progress? Does it just reflect reality, or does it have the power to change it? That's what we're talking about today. Call us with your questions and comments at 612-341-0980 to join the conversation. Again, that's 612-341-0980. You can also tweet us at TTT Andy Driscoll. I'll be checking those posts throughout the hour, or post your comments on Truth to Tell's Facebook page, like we said, facebook.com/Truth to Tell. Now, we were talking earlier about how the common thread between all of our guests today is largely to do with access. Who has access to see shows? Who has access to be a part of shows? And can we bring shows to people where they are if they aren't in a position to come to them? So we heard a little bit from Jack Ruler about radical hospitality at Mixed Blood and just the general mission of what's going on with multicultural productions at Mixed Blood and getting rid of the isms, as you said, through theater. And we talked to Karen Wiese-Thompson about the work that she's doing with 10,000 Things. They bring productions to prisons, low-income housing, battered women's shelters, places where there's more vulnerable populations that can't necessarily come out to the show, so they bring the show to them. Now I want to hear a little bit on that same line from Esther Ore, who's been working for a very long time within the Heart of the Beast Theater and also does some independent productions herself, one particularly about Israel and Palestine that I hope we can talk about a little bit as well. But tell us a little bit about your work, as an independent artist and also as an associate artist within the Heart of the Beast, and how you are helping to get people to access theater, not only as a audience member, but as a part of it as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's easiest to speak about Heart of the Beast because as an independent artist, I tend to be all over the place. It's a little bit more difficult to
But
define.
that's all right. Go all over the place, Esther. It doesn't make any difference.
But, well, In the Heart of the Beast has made, as has Mixed Blood, has made a conscious decision to stay within its neighborhood. So we've moved to a few different locations since I've been with Heart of the Beast, but it's been a conscious decision to stay there on the corner of 15th and Lake. And that defines a lot of what we do and who comes to us. And so
Yes.
we're probably best known for May Day, which actually began as a community event and now has expanded into sort of a citywide event.
Well, it's an institution.
Yeah, right. It has become an institution. So it's a little bit, it's different now. It has a different manifestation than its, although I would say what we do is fairly the same, but what it looks like is quite different than how it began, which was a celebration within that community of Greater Powder Horn.
It went along with the old Russian. I mean, there was a sort of a communist overlay at one point, I think, and now it's really an annual, wonderful May Day celebration in Powderhorn Park, right?
Right. Well, we still try to keep both those elements. I don't know about communist, but we try to keep the elements of celebrating the movement, and being an inspiration for the movement, and as well as being a celebration of spring.
Well, and it's sort of like it's become almost a community art project as well, because you're not just becoming a character, you're also making your own masks or your own puppets as well, right?
And it has always, it's been like that since the beginning, because the people who started it, this isn't necessarily true any longer, but it began as people in that community creating an event. So
and now it's sort of everyone in the city.
Are you still making all kinds of new puppets all the time?
Yes, we are.
All right.
Is it new puppets every year? Or do you
what do they
recycle them?
represent in many cases? I mean, you design a play, I assume, around a puppet.
Well, we tell
bunch of
May Day begins with some community meetings in which we invite people to come to the space and ask them basically what is on their minds, what's in their hearts, what's on their minds. And from that, the artists then create a a storyline. It's not a narrative story, but a storyline. And I always say that each year it's just about the same story, but we lay a different metaphor on it. Because pretty much every year it's a story of moving from grief to empowerment.
Okay.
Is pretty much what lays within that story. And then the artists bring it back to the community. We invite the community a second time to say, does this work for you? Is this reflecting what you are saying? And then from that, we create a storyboard and a visual storyboard, and then invite the community to come and build that.
Really?
So that it morphs again, because depending on, I don't know, you always have some child that comes in, and my daughter always wanted to make fairies, so no matter what, there was a fairy in the story. And then the pageant reflects, somehow takes, that's a more controlled story that happens in the pageant, in the Tree of Life pageant. But the artists on that team take inspiration from the parade story, and then
talk about some of the characters you've all. Excuse me for just a second, but you talk about some of the characters that have been realized in these puppets that you have, where you've performed with other companies, and I mean really big things like the Minnesota Orchestra and stuff. I mean, that's been quite an outreach project, hasn't it?
the Minnesota Orchestra.
Well, yeah. Working
Yeah.
with the orchestra, or working with, let's say, the St. Paul Chamber, or
Yeah.
getting these consortia working.
Well, we have been commissioned by the orchestra to come and do some of their youth programming.
Yeah.
And for us, it's really wonderful because you're like 6 inches away from the sound. We have to be really careful. There have been times where our puppeteers have knocked the first violin. We won't do that again. But
And they still invited you back. That's a good thing.
But it's really quite amazing for us to be in that environment because it's quite different than Lake Street.
Yeah.
Well, yes, indeed.
Can you talk about, I'm just really interested because you've been with this since the beginning, and like you said, you've had a few different homes, but you're in a good position to comment on the evolution of the community and how you see your work making change in the community, and I'm wondering if you can talk about that, about what you've observed. What was the community at 15th and Lake? What was that like before you were, or as you were just getting started to now? Have you noticed anything different? Have people come up to you and said anything about your impact there?
Well, just to clarify, I wasn't there from the very beginning.
Okay.
Maybe 6 years into it.
Okay.
But not from the very beginning, so I was not one of the founders of the theater. But, well, it has, it's definitely changed. I feel like, particularly May Day, is an inspiration. I feel like what we do is we Gandhi has laid out like these 4 steps of how a movement develops. Mm-hmm. Let's see if I can remember them all. The last one being institutionalized, which I feel like Heart of the Beast is at that stage now.
Clearly.
The first one is inspiration. And I feel like what Mayday offers is a really deep, uplifting inspiration for the work of many people. That's South Minneapolis and Powderhorn is a quite amazing community and progressive community.
It's amazing.
And I feel like we have offered a recharge. So I feel like people really look forward to that day, both to reconnect with each other, but also to reconnect with their own sense of power, and to go, oh yes, the Tree of Life, it will rise. It does rise. It's there and it's supporting us. And,
so the Tree of Life is part of the thematic.
Yeah. So every year, the last thing that we do before we clean up, which takes a long time, is to raise the Tree of Life puppet. So.
What are the second and third steps?
That's Patrick's.
Okay, let's see.
Patrick wants to know.
Let's see.
It's a quiz.
Inspiration. I don't remember what comes in between. I'm gonna have to look it up
Inspiration, mobilization. Is there right? And organization somewhere in there. Yeah, there's a before
And
it becomes
snacks.
institutionalized.
Right.
Yeah.
And snacks.
Snacks, yeah.
And snags.
For sure.
Snags, yeah.
Oh, snags. I thought you said snacks.
No,
That's
no.
I
important.
did say
Hey,
snacks.
no.
You have to eat somewhere between the
Well, of course,
perspiration
everybody
and the
has to
inspiration.
eat.
Yeah.
Yes, right.
I was trying to look it up here, but it's not happening fast enough. Now I really want to get to Patrick here before we run out of time because.
And then I also want to get some general comments
Yeah,
about
exactly. So
what role theater does play in social justice, generally and here.
I want to add one more thing about May Day,
Yeah.
which
Would you
is
please?
probably, I mean, I've been talking about the event itself, the culminating event, but really what happens at May Day, the important part of what happens in May Day is what happens for the month before that, in which many, many, many people come in to build a work of art together.
I see.
And that's where the important work comes. That's where the connections are made. That's where the
that's how community is built.
And
That's how
really, and
community is
many people don't know that that's an accessible part of what you could do. I mean, they should know more
right.
about
The
that,
workshop
shouldn't
is
they?
open to the public for free
Oh, well,
through the month of April. There's public
Great.
workshops that Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays.
okay,
So
great.
Awesome. Now, Patrick, let's talk about Patrick's Cabaret. You've
Okay.
had a bumpy ride in the development. I know this, and you started out at a high school,
No, we
Initially,
started out
or-
in
or a
St.
gym?
Stephen's Elementary School
elementary school.
back in the
Okay.
days
Stevens.
when it was a force for liberation theology.
And why was there a need for what you were trying to do here?
Well, what I
Or
was
what was
I-
the need? We'll say.
What happened was, I was at a certain point in my career as an artist where I felt like I'm tired of having to get past some audition committee in order to get my work on stage. I wanted easier access to being on stage. And so I thought, I'm going to have to think outside of the system, because the system was set up that there was a gatekeeper for every stage. And at the time, I had a situation where I was teaching at St. Stephen's School. I was teaching there because they didn't have any money. They didn't have any money to pay me, but they had a great old gymnasium with a wooden floor, which as a dancer was valuable to me. So one day I went and had a meeting with Sister Pat at St. Stephen's, and I said, Pat, I'd love to teach dance and other creative activities here in the school in exchange for being able to use the school gym when the school isn't using it. And because it was a small organization, little bureaucracy, within a half an hour, I had a schedule for teaching and keys to the building.
Great.
And after I'd been in the building and working there for, I don't know, maybe 6-9 months, something like that, it occurred to me that I had some material that I wanted to share people, but I didn't have enough that I wanted to do a whole evening of my own work. I had, maybe 15 or 20 minutes worth of stuff that I wanted to show people. So this is the 1980s, I looked through my Rolodex and called a bunch of friends who were artists. Some were writers, some were singers, it didn't matter what kind of art, and said to them all, do you have 5 to 20 minutes of anything that's sort of work in progress that you'd like to show people? And a bunch of people said yes. We put together the first flyer, we handed out the flyers, people came, and when the evening was over, there were 2 questions that people kept asking me. One was, when's the next one of these going to be? And I was a little
always a good
astounded
sign.
because I'd just been focused on making that one night happen, and the idea that this could happen again was sort of like, oh. So we were leaping from inspire to institutionalize.
It's a big leap.
And the other question people were asking me was, how does a person get to be in one of these? And so as I thought about that, I thought, well, okay, Patrick, people are asking you what the access is going to be. How is this going to work? I said, well, you just have to let me know that you want to be in it, and then I'll put your name on the schedule. Because I thought, I don't have time to audition people.
Yeah.
And I hate having to audition And it's not any more fun being on the other side of auditioning.
As long as you don't end up with a 5-hour performance.
Well, everybody had everybody had a limit. You know, I
Yeah.
said 15 minutes is the maximum that you can have.
Got it.
And I thought ultimately people bring you more interesting work if they get to bring what they're most interested in as opposed to what they perceive that I might be most interested in.
Very good.
And so I think where Patrick's Cabaret really has a unique place in our community in terms of access is trying to provide the greatest access to artists to getting on stage.
And I think, beyond that, I probably would have. I had a friend who was trying to get into the cabaret scene. There's Ball's Cabaret, too, is over at the Southern Theater. And there's just so many open stage opportunities now, which it sounds like there wasn't when you were getting started. But I would never think, like, hey, I should get together with my performer friends and try to come up with something because there is this avenue to go perform. We've gotten to that point, like you said, where it's institutionalized, that you get projects because you exist. You're not necessarily bringing in, people that were just roaming for a place to perform.
Right.
You're
Well,
actually sparking
so what
creativity.
happens after we had been doing Patrick's Cabaret for a while was we start to look at questions like, how can we do this better? How can we find people who aren't showing up on our stage? How do we reach out to other communities? And then that becomes part of the work of running the organization, is not just being accessible to your friends, but being accessible to people that you don't even know about. And how do you go about discovering those people and inviting those people and inviting them to be there on their terms?
That's Patrick Scully, by the way, and we're hearing about Patrick's Cabaret, and we also have Jack Ruler from Mixed Blood, Esther O'Ray from Heart of the Beast, as well as her own independent performances, and Karen Wiese-Thompson. We just want to remind people that of who is here. Karen's right now playing Puck, which is a great role.
So
Usually a tiny little elf kind of person flitting around.
Yeah, I'm not tiny.
Oh, now tiny, yes, right.
I want to come back to a
Patrick,
question Michelle has raised a couple times and address it directly. So how do theaters affect social change?
Please.
Yes.
And I'll broaden the lens a little bit and talk from my perspective as a gay man about how I see the arts affecting social change. Because in my lifetime, I'll turn 60 this fall, there's been an enormous change in the world that I live in terms of my freedom as a gay man to live my life on my own terms. Okay? When I was a young adult in Minneapolis, my sexuality was a felon. Okay? And the Minneapolis police were not my friend. And today, I finally have all the civil rights that any other citizen has in the state of Minnesota.
Do you attribute some of this to the theater?
I attribute an enormous amount of this to artists first daring to dream a better world and then sharing that dream with a larger group of people. And then the activists and other people start to hear about this dream and manifest that. Artists start to live the dream. People are encouraged to come along with the dream, and then change happens. And the last thing that happens is politicians recognize what's happened and come along and pass laws to say what now exists is no longer illegal.
So in your picture, theater is the catalyst for
Theater
change.
and the arts. So, for example, for me as a young gay man, when I saw the movie Word Is Out, a documentary about 15 to 20 different gay men and lesbians and their lives, it rocked my world to see these people up on the screen, and this screen was in a movie theater. Because even the dance world that I entered in 1972 was not a place that was welcoming to openly gay men. The homophobia of the larger society pervaded even the dance world, to a point where I felt like as a gay man and as a dancer, I had to find the other gay men and the lesbians in the dance community who I could count on as my allies and figure out how we could negotiate having a safe place in the dance world.
Fantastic. Now, contribute everybody now. How do you see what Patrick has just said as applying across the board in theater in the Twin Cities or anywhere else, and to your own theater groups?
Well, I think that with any nonprofit, that the idea that organization alone can affect change is possible, but I think when organizations work in tandem with arts organizations, social service agencies, government agencies, and other individuals, they sort of can collectively become the straw that breaks the camel's back, whatever that movement is that you want. You know, I know that it'd be interesting to hear from Patrick that in 2008, for example, when Barack Obama was first, when he had enough votes to get the nomination, and then at the convention, and then on election day, and then the inauguration, people who I really highly regard and admire called and said, "So you're going to close doors, mission accomplished, and declare victory?" And I found that really perplexing, that, you know, if anything, maybe the cup had gotten to be half full. But did you have that experience this year as the various political changes and votes came?
Yeah, well, you know, I continue to remind people that, you know, there are many countries in the world in which there's still a death penalty for homosexuality. And the historical trauma that's been visited on the gay and lesbian community by the three major Abrahamic faiths is going to take centuries, if not longer, if not millennia, to undo. And, you know, I mean, gay activists around the world are still being killed. And so we may have accomplished some things here in Minnesota and some things in some other states in the United States, but globally we've still got an enormous amount of work to do.
And it's not just the gay and lesbian community, but all kinds of other folks, right? Esther, Karen?
Well, I just want to, recently I was on a panel that, I won't say which one it was,
And this is Esther O'Ray, by the way, for our
you know,
listeners.
funds that decides where funding for artists are going to go. And there was a project that had been, the grant had been written before the law had been changed. And there was a debate by the panelists, like, whether this project was still a necessary project or not. And maybe it shouldn't be funded because it wasn't an issue.
Oh.
And luckily, that discussion, you know, the other voice was stronger and the project was funded, but that definitely is, it's out there. That's definitely in the community, yeah.
Karen? What about 10,000 Things and your own?
My experience, I think, is probably a little simpler and smaller, in that I just believe live theater is one of the last bastions of actual interaction between people in a world of tweeting and blogging and online and everything accessible.
Very good point.
That you put a group of strangers in a room together to tell a story, somebody is going to walk away a better person.
Particularly with the intimacy of the productions that you're doing with the other TTT.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. You guys aren't big proscenium types. Well, you're outdoors sometimes. But these are intimate spaces where you guys perform, right? I mean, this is, you started the theater in the round yourself, Jack. I did some theater in the round. We like that intimacy, don't we?
But we're all on the same side. I think, you know, it used to be that there was a sense that theaters competed with one another, but it's really a live event, as you say, when people can assemble in a place and have a common experience. So if you're going to the Vikings or the orchestra when it ever plays, or theater or dance, we're all on the same side. Our competition has become, the mouse and the laptop and the remote, and so we're all on the same side. So whether it's the large proscenium houses or outside or any of our venues, a live event is a good thing.
God, here we go again.
Unfortunately. Well, do you have one quick comment? Because we have to come to a close here. Can you make it quick?
Go ahead,
well,
Esther.
not to be too esoteric, but literally, you know, energy changes. Live art shifts something in the space.
Yes.
So when you're face to face and you're using the tools of performance and the tools of music and the tools of beauty, it shifts what happens inside our bodies.
Yes, it really does. Yeah, both as performers and as people in that space watching the story unfold, sometimes being incorporated into that story, and sometimes not. Well,
unfortunately, we must end it there. Our hour is gone.
There we go.
I understand we had one caller that called in and we didn't get to them. I apologize, but we will, we've taken your question. We'll get back to you. We'd like to thank all of our guests today. We have Esther O'Ray, independent teaching and performing artist and associate artist within the Heart of the Beast Theater. Patrick Scully, performing artist and founder of Patrick's Cabaret.
Karen Wiese-Thompson, a longtime Twin Cities actress and company member with 10,000 Things. And the great Jack Ruler, artistic director and founder of Mixed Blood Theater. Thank you all very much for coming.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
You're all great. Once more next week, we talk about new resources for those who suffer from mental health issues and initiatives to reduce the stigma associated with this spectrum. Don't miss it.
Truth to Tell is a co-production of Civic Media Minnesota and KFAI. Links to audio and video archives of this and all of our past shows are up on TTT's own website, truthtotell.org, as well as kfai.org.
Thanks to our crew engineer, Kel Heil, videographer Craig Stelmacher, and production assistant Emily Kronberger.
And join us again next week for another edition of Truth to Tell. Until then, I'm Michelle Alimoradi.
And I'm Andy Driscoll. See you next week. And as always, please do take care of each other.